Blog Talk Radio.
Man. Greetings. Context of White Supremacy, Gus T Renegade, in for another program to share constructive information on what racism, white supremacy is and how it works. Yesterday, I believe, we had tech issues towards the end of the broadcast. Program ended a little bit earlier than I had. Things I wanted to share, and we had a lot of people on the line. I was hoping everyone would get an opportunity to share their views. Hopefully that won't happen today. Thank you all for tuning into the broadcast, and hopefully we will have no tech issues. And again, all of the tech issues would vanish. MacBook Pro. Please invest. The link is on the front page for the show. You can see my PayPal account, and MacBook Pro. Thank you all for the support. Today's program really is a testament to which you can focus on racism, white supremacy. A lot of the things that white people use in a not so constructive manner could be used to assist in replacing white supremacy with justice. I found out about the book we're going to discuss today and the co-authors just because my Facebook is focused on replacing white supremacy with justice. So pretty much, I would say 80% of the links that are posted have something to do with racism, white supremacy. So I get to see books, news articles, just lots of great information. I know I've dug at least 5 programs just out of stuff that people post on Facebook. So right on. But this book was posted not that long ago. The book is The Trojan Horse, Death Nation. Contacted the good folks who put the book together. It is a collection of authors, which I think is pretty interesting. And we have one of the co-authors. She was willing to come hang out and chat with us. I will let her share what she would like to about herself and the book, which I think has a lot of great information. And looking forward to having a wonderful conversation. Our guest wants, I don't even want to share in her the option if she would like to remain anonymous. But our guest, one of the co-authors of Trojan Horse, Death of the Nation. Are you with us?
Yes, I am. Hi, how are you doing this evening?
I am.
I'm sorry, we're breaking up a little bit. Can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am, I can hear you.
Okay.
Yes, I am still being mistreated, still learning, and still focused on replacing white supremacy with justice. How are you doing?
I'm doing the same. And that was the purpose of us writing the book, was to replace white racism, white supremacy with justice.
Wow. If you would like to remain anonymous, for the program, no problem. I'll give you the option. Do you want to remain anonymous for the program?
Well, I don't mind my first name.
Okay. Pamela?
Yes.
Okie dokie. Pamela, I guess, anything you would like to share with our listeners about what motivated you to write this book, or any information about Trojan Horse, Death of a Dark Nation?
Well, the book actually started as fiction. There was a black female character in the fiction book who worked in the television industry, and she was dealing with racism on the job. And in her personal life, she was dark-skinned, so she was dealing with colorism and Jim Crow-ism in the dating world. So this book, in this fictional story called The Trojan Horse, appeared on the scene. It was written by an anonymous author who printed up thousands of copies and left them on the doorsteps of bookstores all over America with the instructions to give them away. And the book was about how racism, white supremacy was used to divide and conquer the black male and female. And it created so much controversy that the FBI got involved and the government was trying to ban the book. So the book grew beyond the novel itself, and so we decided, there's a group of us who are always dialoguing about racism and white supremacy, and we decided why not turn this book within a book into a real book. And before we knew it, we were writing a separate book, and the fiction book that I was writing was put to the side. And the idea of making the author anonymous really came from the fictional version, but it appealed to us so much that we decided to go ahead and do it that way. Unfortunately, we couldn't print up thousands of books and give them away, so we had to go the traditional route of printing the book and then trying to sell it to get the message out.
Wow. That is quite fascinating. I just want to make sure I understood this correctly. The premise behind the book originally was going to be a fictional book, and you all printed 1,000 copies, left them at various bookstores with instructions to give the book away, not even to sell it. The fictional book focused on how the system of racism, white supremacy is designed to cause friction, conflict between black males and black females. The book caused such controversy that the FBI got involved. You all switched gears, scrapped plans for continuing with a fictional book, and went with a non-fiction book on the system of racism, white supremacy that is for sale, and that is the product Trojan Horse, Death of a Dark Nation. Is that accurate? It's
pretty accurate. In the book, I would just add this. In the fictional book, the anonymous author, was actually printed up, I think, about 100,000 copies.
Okay.
And put them on small bookstores' doorsteps all over the country. And that's pretty much, you got it correctly. That's pretty much how the book itself came into being. Because initially we were going to just write a very short version, put it online anonymously, and encourage people to share it by email, by download. But then the book kept growing and growing, and it got to be impractical to have it just as a download. So we decided to turn it into a book. But originally we were going to do it for free.
Wow.
And if I ever win the lottery, that's what I'd do with the money.
Wow.
That's right.
Wow. Wow. And anything you don't, want to answer, don't feel like revealing, no problem. How many participated in writing and putting together this book?
There were 4 of us.
4. Okay. Sizable enough. Are all of the authors of the book non-white?
All non-white, right.
Okay.
We're all black men and women.
Okay. Wow. Well, that I think we've had a lot of conversations on this program. minimizing between victims and white men together and minimize the amount of friction. You all have codified and you've got a product, Trojan Horse, definitely. I guess before we get to suggestions, I want to get the definition out, and I want to share the website. Anybody, if you are interested in getting a copy of Trojan Horse or learning more information about the book, please visit the website TrojanHorse1.com. Again, TrojanHorse1. If you're listening and radio, you can just click the title of the book you directly to the website. But this program's context of white supremacy, I have unfortunately concluded in a global system of racism, white supremacy, and the definition that I use for both racism and white supremacy is as follows: a global system of people who classify themselves as white and are dedicated to abusing and or subjugating everyone in the known universe whom they classify as not white. Do you believe that such a system exists, and do you think that definition is accurate?
Yes, I do. I think that's an excellent description and definition. I think white supremacy is the most dominant and most destructive force on the planet. I think it's the most brilliantly destructive force that's ever been designed by man. And I think that it is a global system. There's no doubt about it when you see all of the devastation that occurs all over the world because of white supremacy.
All right. Okay. I want to get back to that. It's really important. I hope folks who are listening in, it's not this important. I guess if you can the partnership between the co-authors and how you all were able to work together to produce this book, minimizing, if you could share some of the strategies and I guess the nature of how you were able to work together so constructively, that would be great.
Okay. We were always dialoguing about white supremacy. We were always on the same page. We had similar experiences, but we also had different experiences. One person works in entertainment, and that was one reason for their anonymity. Another person works in politics, and they could bring their own unique perspectives to the table, their own unique experiences, things that I would have never known about, they were able to tell me about, things that I had seen, because I'm a unique individual with unique experiences. I was able to share with them, and we did bring it all together under one editing platform. One person edited it, and so that's why the book has a continuous feel to it, as though there might be one author. But basically, so many different unique individuals coming together with their unique experiences just really broadened the whole platform of what the book was about. And it also created balance, because we didn't want to do a book that was a personal set of gripes and an individual disappointment. We didn't want it to be bitter. We didn't want it to be mean and nasty. We wanted it to be as accurate as we were able to make it, given that we're not objective human beings. We're human beings with blind spots and issues. And so the more, the fact that there were more than one person involved, we were able to balance that out.
I'm assuming, and I could be incorrect, in the process of putting this book together, I'm sure, and even just in the process of having conversations about racism, white supremacy, I'm sure there were disagreements. How did you diffuse the disagreements so that you all could continue towards being constructive and producing Trojan Horse? Well,
there were certainly disagreements. one thing that kind of kept things in check for us was we were doing it anonymously, so the egos weren't involved as much. And that was one of the main reasons we did it anonymously, because we felt that once you start taking credit, once you start looking for recognition, pats on the back, then you lose the focus of what you're trying to do. And we didn't reinvent the wheel. We built this book on the backs of many, many great, and brilliant black minds, male and female. Dr. Francis Quest Welsing, Mr. Neely Fuller Jr., and so many others. How we got through the disagreements, that's a good question. I don't think we had that many, believe it or not. We would sit and discuss things, and then we would decide what was the most constructive and most logical way. And we tried to be as logical as possible. So that really helped a lot with the individual disagreements.
This cannot be true to have 4 non-white people. The co-authors, are they all black males and females?
Yes.
Okay. That I almost want to say you cannot be telling the black people together, work actively on racism, white supremacy, and to really not have that many disagreements or disputes. That is, wow, quite remarkable.
It is.
May I?
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, please. Did you have more?
No, not really. I was agreeing with you.
Wow. May I ask roughly how long the group has known one another?
Over 10 years.
Wow.
Sometimes when we talk, we actually sound like we're talking to ourselves. I guess because we were on the same page, that's what made it possible. Because a lot of times we would basically be repeating each other verbatim. I would say something and somebody else would have said something, would have just been getting ready to make the same comment, but I beat them to the punch. So we were really pretty much on the same page.
Wow. I guess maybe that's something to find just the other non-white people who have a similar viewpoint and not have too many major disputes or disagreements. Maybe that's the route to go to see if you can produce constructive material to work against racism, white supremacy. Wow. Very interesting. Let me make sure I give the website out again for folks so they can go check out the book. The web address is TrojanHorse1.com. Oh, my screen went out. TrojanHorse1.com. Could you, share a little bit for folks who have not read the book? Can you talk a little bit about why the book is titled Trojan Horse?
Yes, we named it Trojan Horse because of the Greek the Greek story about how the Trojan horse was used, presented as a gift, but inside there were all these weapons of destruction. The armed soldiers who literally were waiting inside for the Trojans to go to sleep and turn their back on the horse that they thought was a gift. And I see the system itself in many different phases. It's a Trojan horse. When it comes to education, when it comes to politics, when it comes to all of the things that we think of as gifts, they're really designed to keep us disempowered and enslaved. For example, the educational system. On the surface, it sounds like a good thing, but the educational system basically miseducates and undereducates and programs black youth, black children, to be inferiors in a white supremacy system. So we named it Trojan Horse because we thought that most people would recognize the term they would understand what it meant. And then we set about demonstrating the 13 weapons of mass mind destruction inside the Trojan horse.
Wow. I definitely want to get into some of the weapons that you all break down in the book. I guess before I get to that, there is a statement, and individuals, if you're listening, you can go to the website and you can read more about this. But it was stated that this book, this is a direct quote I'm reading, this book was not written to hurt feelings, provoke racial animosity, or to promote dislike or hatred of whites. Nor was this book written to elevate blacks or to make excuses for Black America's current dilemma. Our opposition to racism, white supremacy, does not mean we oppose the rights, dignity, or freedom of whites. White people have much of value and beauty to the world. We oppose is the system of white supremacy that artificially limits the opportunities, freedoms, development, humanity, and quality of life for the non-white majority on the planet. I guess from that statement, it seems like you wanted to make it very clear that you do not, in this book, promote a hatred or any sort of animosity towards white people. And what motivated you to include this statement with regards to white people?
Well, we included the statement not to appease white people, but to clarify what we were trying to do. Our whole goal is not to replace white injustice with black injustice, because that way we short-circuit our own liberation. If we're going to be for justice, we have to be for justice for everyone. And that means that even though hate is an understandable reaction to gross mistreatment and injustice, it is not a solution to solving the problem. It actually is an emotional reaction that limits your ability to solve a problem. So what we were trying to do was not so much reach out to whites, because I think black people, frankly, do too much of that. I think our focus was to make the position clear that we're not flipping the script, so to speak, and promoting black hatred toward white people. We're trying to elevate the conversation so that it is not about disliking anyone. It's about loving ourselves. And loving ourselves means telling ourselves the truth. And telling ourselves the truth will bring us self-respect. And so we can't lie about white people and then claim that we're going to liberate ourselves. And that's why we included this statement. The whole book really was aimed at the masses of black people, in particular the black people that would not read a book like this normally. A lot of books on racism, excellent books, brilliant books, they read like textbooks. And so we decided we would try to create a book that would appeal to the people who don't do a lot of reading, people that pick up a book similar to ours and they're intimidated by the endless paragraphs and the footnotes and all and that kind of format. So we were trying to create a book that had a little bit of that basically could be read by anybody who had a sixth grade education. And we included stories in there to illustrate the points we were making, so that it would appeal to people who don't want to read a textbook kind of book. So that's pretty much the whole format of the book, and why we introduced that. We did not want to appear to be bitter and hateful toward anybody.
Wow. I just want to if I'm wrong. Black people.
Hello? I'm sorry, we're breaking up.
I being heard? Am I being heard? Hello? Check.
Yeah.
Check.
Yes, I can hear you. I'm not sure if it's I'm sorry that in this interview, but I can't be sure if it's my phone or yours. Can you hear me?
Again, MacBook Pro folks.
Hello?
Yes, believing.
Oh,
I'm still not picking on.
hello?
Am I being
No, I can't. I didn't get any of that.
heard now?
Okay, could you try it again? No, I'm not getting it. Hello? I'm not getting it.
Am I being heard?
Hello? Hello?
No.
Oh, this is terrible. Okay. Hello?
I'm not being heard.
Try it again. I'm getting bits and pieces. Hello? Oh, boy. Hello? Am I getting it up?
Okay. I should be reconnected. Again, MacBook Pro, and this is exactly why August 5th. The program is does not have the funds to purchase a MacBook Pro because, yeah, it's just too challenging. And I believe have Tamala sheet with the get your line open. Let's see. I see you on the switchboard. I'm opening your mic up now. Thank you for hanging in. Out there, switchboard up just just hang tight. I see you on the switchboard. I'm going to open your mic up in 1 sec. And again, all of this is not Blog Talk Radio. I know someone commented, they said that other people have technical issues on their program as well, and they just blame Blog Talk Radio. This is not Blog Talk Radio. This is not having a computer to do the program. If you think it's constructive, please invest. Alrighty. Thank you for being patient. A couple seconds. All right. Taking a little bit more time than I anticipated. I'm actually been taking this long with two separate machines to open the lineup. Let's see, I thought we had, okay, should have her line open. Are you still with us?
Yes, I am.
All righty. My apologies for the interference. Some of that is, again, me not having my own computer, and some of that I suspect could be racist white supremacist interference because now I have two machines that it was still not. There could be attempts to disrupt the broadcast. But thank you for your patience, and I actually remembered where we left off. In your response, that was agency, I believe you said black people are conditioned to cater to white people. If you did say that, could you elaborate on that?
Yes.
Please.
Okay. We are conditioned to cater to them because we're so dependent on them. We have been through a 400 to 500 plus year of deconstruction in every sense of the word, culturally, religiously. Everything that made us who we were was literally stripped from us. So we became the creation of the white supremacists. And we also are so dependent on them that we fear and resent. This dependency comes, along with this dependency comes the fear and the resentment. It's the same phenomena that happens if you have a boss who you're dependent on for your income. And so when he comes around, you feel a little nervous. You feel a little, you want to appease him. You want to impress him. You want to give him a positive impression of you because you're so dependent on him. And I would compare that to the way black people are in America. When you're very dependent on someone, you automatically fear, and there's a certain amount of resentment. And you can see that play out every day in our relationships at work, in our interactions in public. You can listen to black people when they talk to white people. A lot of times they're mimicking and saying the kind of things that they think white people want to hear. And I'm guilty of the same. And that's why I can speak on it, because I'm guilty of doing the same thing.
Me too. And in fact, I would assert that I suspect every non-white person, every victim of white supremacy is guilty of catering to white people at some point in time. Anyone who is not, that's the person we should be following. Wow. Okay. I guess one thing I did want to ask, because many of the recent guests who've been coming on the program have been very upfront about the fact that they do not like white people, and they feel that it would be constructive for non-white people, victims of white supremacy, to develop a mild dislike of white people. It would not only be justified, that will be necessary to replace white supremacy with justice. How do you feel about that?
I think I respect that position. I respect their feelings. I understand them completely. I think, however, we may venture into making the same mistake that they've made with us, because once you decide to focus on disliking someone or hating someone, then you become obsessed with them. When you look at whites, for example, collectively, I think it'd be pretty hard to deny that they don't like us, yet they're obsessed with us. I think the opposite of hate is indifference, or should I say the opposite of love is indifference. And I think that if we focus more on ourselves and how we feel about ourselves, and empowering ourselves and respecting and loving ourselves, it won't be necessary to dislike anyone. I do think, however, whatever we need to do, we need to stop having sex with white people. And I don't think that has anything to do with disliking them. I think it has to do with reducing the confusion and the contradiction, because sex between non-whites and whites is a contradiction if anyone is seeking justice and liberation. You can't lay down with white supremacy at night and get up in the morning and fight it. It's just not going to happen.
A contradiction. Can you unpack that for us a little bit? A contradiction. Yeah, can you unpack that?
Sure. I'll just give you an example. If we were discussing just a few minutes ago about how black people will appease white people, how their behavior will change with white people, how we will say things, even agree with racist attitudes and things to appease them. We don't want them to think that we dislike them. We don't want them to think this or that. We put on these false faces, and we talk about that a lot in the book. The white identified black person, for example. And so now you've got this false face, and we can see it play out every day in our interactions. White people also wear a false face around us. So you've got these two people who traditionally and historically and routinely wear false faces with each other. Now they're coming together in a relationship. What is going to happen in that relationship, I believe, and all of this is just my opinion, is you're going to have a falseness in that relationship. The black person is going to be trying to appease the white person by denying their reality. In order for them to get along with that white person, they have to deny their reality. Otherwise, there's going to be a conflict, because even white people who get involved sexually or romantically with black people, they really don't want to know what you're going through. They really don't want to talk or hear about racism or white supremacy. They want you to pretend that you're not going through anything that puts their group, their race, in a bad light. So that means to get along with them, you have to deny who you are, what you are, your history, and everything else. Now imagine these people coming together in a relationship with these false faces. The black person, to me, is at great psychological risk when they have sex with or marry and date white people. Not because white people are bad people, but because racism, white supremacy creates a falseness in that relationship automatically. And I've watched people who think that they've risen above that, and they'll talk about racism, the liberal person. But in reality, if you listen closely enough, you can see that they really and truly they still believe in white supremacy at the heart of it. So I personally think that if we have this falseness between us in very casual circumstances, what do you do when you get into a relationship?
And it may be, and I'm not unwilling to critically look at this. It may be just a personal desire on my part to find a kind of soothing lotion so it doesn't feel so painful what it is that you're saying. So I'm not unwilling to look at that.
That was Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. He is a black male, admitted recovering victim of white supremacy. He is the founder of the White Privilege Conference. Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. is married to an admitted racist white female. And I played that sound. I want to make very clear for everybody, Dr. Moore has been on this program twice. That sound clipped from the cat, and I have played that sound clip back to him and asked him his thoughts on it. So this is not gossiping. Just go back in the archives. You can listen to both programs. What is your view, a non-white person who is having sex with a white person or racist, admitted racist, and says, hey, we talk about racism. We're very honest. My white sex partner, we have discussions all the time. We work against racism, different organizations. He admits to being a racist. We constructive work, and it's not a contradiction. What would your response be?
I would say that that's the delusion of the whole that kind of relationship. What I found is common among some, not all necessarily, but I think most interracial relationships is those individuals usually, this is just my opinion, date one white person after another. And so therefore, that indicates a problem right there. Assuming that they haven't done that, I think that, again, the best that it can get, as Mr. Fuller once said, is tacky. And by tacky, I agree with that. I believe it's superficial. And I've watched black people talk to people who consider themselves white liberals. And the talk is all good and fine, and we can all make things sound the way we want them to sound. But the behavior always says something else. If you watch that black person and that white person long enough, or observe them over an extended period of time, you will see the falseness in it. You will see the best word I can think of is falseness. You will see it. I'll give you an example. I have a female relative who is married to a white man, and I remember being a child, and he was a very nice person. Nothing. There was Nothing I could say bad about him as an individual human being. But I do remember this in particular when I was a child. One time this black man, and I forgot who he was, came by the house, and we were all at my mother's house, and my female relative was visiting with her husband. And this black male walked in. Well, her white husband had never seen him before, and I automatically saw the tension in him. I saw the hostility in him. And I remember as a child thinking, what was that? And then, as I got older, I realized he didn't have any black male friends. No black males were ever around. And so I make that point to say that this was a very nice person. He was a liberal person. He was a person that had been on the battle line. I won't say the battle lines, but he had been involved in some of the protests of the 60s against racism. Yet and still, within him, there was this racism. So whether this gentleman that you mentioned and him and his wife talk about it, I've overheard these conversations throughout my life, and I'd have to say overall they're superficial and phony. And I believe they're a form of again, the black person and the white person in that dance of pretending to be something that they're not. And I think that, quite honestly, you can't, I'll say it again, you cannot lay down with white supremacy at night and get up in the morning and fight it. Being in an interracial relationship automatically neutralizes black people's will to really fight it. And it also reduces your credibility.
Wait a minute now.
I would not follow them.
Wait a minute.
No.
It reduces your credibility? You're going to have to deconstruct that a little bit.
Okay. When I say credibility, I mean your credibility as a non-white person seeking justice in a white supremacy system. When you can't free yourself of the hold that white supremacy has on you, how are you going to free anyone else?
The hold on me is just, I'm in a loving, matter of fact, I will pass the mic because you can say this better than myself, but sexual.
Make it clear to your listeners that in no way do I see these marriages as being anything other than legal, loving unions, and in no way do I think any of these marriages represent anything tragic. We should all be so lucky to be in relationships with people that love us.
Interesting.
That is Cheryl Giudice, black female, and has never been mistreated because she is not white.
I'm sorry, excuse me, that last part broke up.
Racial marriages, white. Professor of She is the author of Interracial Marriages Between Black Women and White Men. Is a PhD of African American Studies at Northwestern University, and according to her own testimony, she has never been mistreated because she is not white.
Again, the falseness. I mean, I don't mean to insult anyone or particularly someone that's not here to defend themselves, but right then and there, I say on 3 points I would make about that is, one, she has a dog in the race. She believes possibly that it's to her benefit because the publishing companies love to publish books like that. The media loves to interview people like that. And for a black person who sounds like they're over the age of 21, who can actually say they've never been mistreated as a black person, in my opinion, automatically has zero credibility. That doesn't mean that she has zero credibility. Just in my opinion, that person could not advise me about anything to do with race, if I was going to give my honest opinion. To say that these marriages are based on love, and some are, and I'm sure there are, but it's interesting that these marriages often have the highest failure rate. They end in divorce more often. We're working on the second book, which is about not about interracial relationships, but about black male, black female relationships. And during our research, we came across some interesting statistics, and one was that the divorce rate for black male, white female marriages was twice as high as white male, white female marriages, and higher than black male, black female marriages. So what brings an interracial couple together in a society where race is everything, where we come to the table with preconceived notions of what race means, in a nation where white supremacy beauty standards are the norm? How can a black and white person come together and not come together and race not be part of it? And for those couples that race is not a part of it at all, because I do not believe in the concept of colorblind love, because you got to physically be blind, in my opinion, to not see the race of another individual. And in a white supremacy system, the race of an individual carries baggage. So when people claim that love is colorblind, what they're really saying is they're so color obsessed that they have to be in denial.
Again, one of the co-authors of Trojan Horde, Death of a Dark Nation, Pamela. And again, none of these folks not gossiping. Cheryl Judice, that was also sound clipped from the Cows. She was here in February. Actually, she was here on Valentine's Day, 2010. You can go back and listen to the archives. And again, Dr. Eddie Moore Jr. was here twice, May 2009, May 2010. Not gossiping at all. Okay, I don't want to get stuck on the interracial relationship thing. Folks can evaluate for themselves. In your book, you all describe entertainment, the new crack for blacks. Can you explain why you chose that metaphor?
It's in my opinion, entertainment has become an addiction. It's the same concept that they used in ancient times. When people were being mistreated, they gave them entertainment. And entertainment is used to distract us. For example, the sports industry, they have sports back-to-back. From one season overlaps the next season, and I believe that's to distract people from what's really going on. But for black people, the entertainment starts from the time that we're old enough to sit in front of a television and focus our eyes on the screen. And so we seem to become programmed and hypnotized by entertainment. It's a constant. Even when we get together for constructive purposes, there has to be some form of entertainment, either fashion show or refreshments or something going on, music. And so I believe that the entertainment industry is used against us because our images are at stake in this entertainment industry. And people watch it to see who they are and see what they should be like. And just like the crack addict, they develop a constant need for entertainment, which is one reason I think that reading has dropped off severely among the American people, not just black people, because people now are hooked on entertainment. I mean, it's endless from DVDs to CDs to TV shows to cable to sports to video games, and so it becomes a form of dumbing us down, making us brain numb, because it's all around us and it's 24/7 situation where you can actually be entertained 24 hours, 7 days a week. But the question is, what are you looking at when you're being entertained? Because the media does not spend millions and millions of dollars to entertain you. They spend millions and millions of dollars to program you. So really, television and media has become, entertainment has really become programming. I hope I answered that question. There's so much involved, it's hard to really put it into a few sentences.
What would your response be for people who say that, a lot of white people in Gen 2, are you saying that they are addicted to television and entertainment as well?
I believe a lot of white people are, but the difference is, in my opinion, is black people are being programmed against themselves. White people see a variety of white images. They see the comedy, they see the seriousness, the serious dramas, they see white people in all phases of life. The smart white people, the white people that create things, that design things, that build things, the white people that even go over in Africa and civilize Africa and show the Africans how to survive in Africa. Everything that is in the media promotes white supremacy. So a white person that watches a lot of entertainment, they don't walk away feeling inferior or feeling that they need to be more black. But black people watching entertainment often walk away feeling that black is inferior. And we can see that in the various experiments that are done with black children, like the black doll, white doll experiment. I don't believe for 1 minute that anybody, white or black, went up to a 4-year-old little girl and told her she was inferior. So where did she get it from? A lot of 4-year-olds have been sitting in front of the TV for the last 2 years. Since the time they were 2 years old, they've been watching the images. And children are very perceptive, but they don't have a filter. So everything they see, they internalize, and they interpret through that. It's like a sponge. Their brain soaks up the images. And if the images were not white supremacist images, why at the age of 4 and 5 do they already feel inferior? Why do they feel the white doll is a superior doll? I don't believe anybody told them that. They figured it out on their own from watching television and from watching the imagery, and in addition, the dolls and the toys. When you look at the world looks like a wonderful place that is 99% white. If you watch television, the superheroes are white. Nancy Drew is white. Harry Potter is white. Everything in television is geared toward promoting white supremacy. And for black people, it's a psychological death sentence. And I don't mean to state that so strongly, but anytime that you feel inferior because you are you, then something inside of you has been destroyed. Fortunately, if we are able to deprogram our children and deprogram ourselves, we can restore what was lost.
I suspect, podcast, if you can tolerate the little issues, and we've got to have Pamela back on the program, particularly that quality. I want to codify an aspect of television because I know a lot of people struggle with, if you're going to watch TV, you should have your thinking cap on. White supremacy can use anytime they're watching TV to help them evaluate what's coming across that tube and just give honest feedback. First thing on television or at the movie theater, in watching, how does this make me feel about black people? How do you feel about that in terms of just codifying? That's one question victims should always ask when watching television or movie.
I'm sorry, were you asking me a question? Because some of it I got lost.
Oh, okay. You can hear me, though?
I can hear you. It just keeps breaking up, but I can hear you now.
Okay. The question was, in making an effort to codify how black people watch television or movies, what do you think about always keeping in mind when watching a television program or film, how does this make me feel about black people? Do you think that would be a constructive question for black people to keep in mind when viewing television?
Absolutely. I think it's important that we understand the system that we're in, and that everything, unfortunately, and some people might think this is extreme, I don't think it is. Everything is about promoting white supremacy. From our images to television to education, everything. And the key is to see it when it's in front of you, and to see it when it's disguised, And many times they don't even have to disguise it because they've got people convinced that it's just entertainment. So I absolutely think that everything that you see, you're being programmed one way or another because the images get into your brain and they're there. And so even if someone didn't intend to program you, they would be programming you because your brain is like a sponge. And everything that you hear and see is somehow it passes into, it gets stored in there. And unless you neutralize it or reject it before it settles in and takes root, it's going to be part of your conscious and your subconscious. So, yes, I absolutely believe that when you're watching anything or reading anything in a white supremacist society that has to do that involves non-white people or white people, that you must recognize that you're being programmed.
Can you, I guess, share your thoughts on how black male and female relationships, how they tend to be presented in the entertainment programming?
Yes, I've watched this over the last 20 years. Well, I'd say at least definitely the last 15 years. And I remember talking about it, and that was the images are constantly combative, negative, to the point where they've evolved into a stage where black males and females are totally separated. If you watch the commercials, you don't see black men and women together. You'll see a black woman alone, maybe with her children. You'll see a black man in a mixed crowd with white females and white males, and no black women around. They constantly divide and conquer us and call it entertainment. I'll give you an example. On Donald Trump's The Apprentice show, I'll never forget this. There was a character named Omarosa, and she was the only black woman contestant. And I was watching this show, and I remember thinking, why is she always so combative, so always in a conflict with someone? Well, to make a long story short, after a while I started to realize she possibly was a plant in the show. And because she was always in an argument, and she was just a character that people disliked. Then I was certain of it when toward the end of the show, when the black contestant, he was named Kwame. He was it boiled down to two people, a white man named Bill and the black man named Kwame. And they had to pick from all the people who had been disqualified and eliminated. They had to pick their team toward the finish line, to see who was going to win. At the end, Omarosa wound up sabotaging Kwame's chances of winning. And when I saw that, I knew. I said, this was a plant. This was staged. And the way you can tell something is staged, in my opinion, is what happens to that person who was used as the tool of that destructive image. They're usually rewarded. Sure enough, she was rewarded. She started appearing on other reality shows. Now she's got her own reality show. So to me, it's you get rewarded for playing a certain kind of role, and that's how you can tell, in my opinion, sometimes when that black person has been used or allowed themselves to be used to create more destructive messaging and to create more destructive imagery. And I've seen it time and time again where black people, the black male and female, will be at odds with each other, or they just won't be together. And I think that they've been very effective because now the state of war between the black male and female, which isn't really a war between us, it's a war of ignorance. We think we're fighting each other, but what we're really doing is we're allowing ourselves to be tools of white supremacy. And so I've watched this conflict between the black male and black female escalate, and it's all by design.
Have you codified some techniques to combat the conflict between black males and black females?
Have I codified it?
Some techniques to try to combat.
Well, the techniques that we're actually working on in the second book is first to have knowledge of self. And so we take the black male, the reader, we take them back to where it all began. And in our opinion, based on our limited knowledge, we start at slavery, how the black male and female were deconstructed and depeopled during slavery, how they were humiliated in front of each other during slavery, how the black man was raped during slavery, how the black female was raped in front of the black man during slavery, and everything that came from that beginning, the breakdown in that African family, the breakdown in respect between the black male and female, but at that time the African male and African female, that breakdown in respect. Because if you can imagine the African male who watches the women and his female children being raped and he can't do anything about it, he has to start internalizing a way so he can survive psychologically, and that is to decide that he doesn't have to protect them. The African female who is being raped and being abused and beaten, watching the African man stand there helpless, she loses respect for him. So I believe that a lot of our problems stem from that beginning. And throughout our course of our journey here through America, the segregation, the racism, the imagery, the introduction of welfare, where the black man was literally ejected from his home. Now the black female starts to see the black man as an unnecessary accessory. And I'm saying this not that this is the way everyone feels, but everything has been done from the very beginning to break that relationship down, to break the black family down. And you can see it happening even to this day. The mass incarceration of black men to break the family down. The independent, how black women are promoted. This whole idea of being independent, I don't need a man, being promoted among black females. All of this is designed to break down the black family, to break down the union and the bond between the black male and female. And so you see it play out, and that's how we attack it. We attack it. We start at the very beginning up to the present day, with the media being a major instrument of divide and conquer among the black male and female. Hello? Oh, no. Hello?
Sorry. Yes, ma'am. Sorry. Wow.
I can't. Okay.
Can I be heard?
I didn't catch that.
Oh, I just said that I was having tech issues, but that should be good. You can hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. With regards to male-female relationships, I felt that was real important, kind of going back so we have a better understanding of this conflict. Do you have tips specifically with, I guess, marriages between black males, females, and dating? Do you have any techniques to try to relationships?
Do I have any techniques to
minimum conflict when black males and females attempt a marriage or a dating situation?
The techniques. Unfortunately there's no one way to solve the problem, but I do think the most important thing, and that's the reason that we're writing the second book, is to understand how we got into this condition. And I believe that the first thing black males and females have to do, besides educating ourselves about how it started, is we have to rebuild the empathy. Because during the depeopling and deconstructing process, we've lost empathy. And I believe integration created a climate of black people separating themselves in a very poisonously individualistic way. And I think that in order to rebuild the empathy, you have to understand how much damage was done and where the damage began, so that you won't blame the victims. For example, if I as a black woman, if I look at the condition of black men collectively as just something that black men do, and not understand the damage that was done to black men, then I'm not going to have the empathy necessary to have a constructive and positive relationship, an empathetic relationship with a black man. And I think building empathy is crucial. But empathy can't be built off thin air. It has to come from knowledge and understanding. And the same with black men. You know, if they view black women as that's just the way black women are, without understanding the 500-year history here of black women and the degradation of black women, then they won't have the necessary empathy to build a positive relationship with a black woman who may still be exhibiting some of those signs of racial memory and of post-traumatic slavery syndrome. So we're coming together as though we were white people who have not been damaged. And white people have also been damaged because you can't damage people collectively without damaging yourselves. But their damage is different than our damage. But we've basically been taught to see each other through white eyes, and I think that's why we always come up short, because our vision is flawed.
Aspect of white and black female.
I'm sorry, I didn't catch that.
Oh, okay. An aspect of it is designed to prevent that empathetic relation into conflict between black.
Hello?
Okay. Okay.
The question was, do you think a significant aspect of racism, white supremacy, is about preventing that empathetic relationship between black males and black females, and just maintaining conflict between the two?
If I heard the question correctly, I believe it's crucial to prevent black males and black females from coming together and unifying. I believe that is the main goal of what I would call the gender wars between the black male and female. And the reason that those gender wars are being promoted is crucial to break the bond between the black male and female, because that way you guarantee that the black family will be destroyed. And if you destroy the black family, you destroy the black community. And if you destroy the black community, you destroy any possibility of a black business space or any kind of black business space. So to keep us in the condition that we're in, you must divide and conquer the black male and female. That's the foundation of every human society, is the family. And without that family, you have nothing. And other ethnicities understand that because their families have not been deconstructed. Even though they may have been subject to white supremacy and subjected to racism, they were not taken through the process of deconstruction the way people who descended from African slaves were taken through that process. And so if you look at it, everything, even the interracial, the media has been pushing interracial relationships at black people from what I can tell, for about 10 to 15 years now, very strongly. You can't even go on a black website now without seeing the ads for interracial dating services and banner ads for interracial dating, because they know that if they can continue to divide and conquer the black male and female, it doesn't matter how much education we have. It doesn't matter how big our houses are. It doesn't matter how many fancy cars we drive. We will always be subject to being subject to white supremacy and being subject to being oppressed.
Again, one of the co-authors of Trojan Horse, Death of a Dark Nation. Pamela, and the website. Again, folks, where if you can go get more information on the book, you can also order a copy. TrojanHorse1.com. Again, TrojanHorse1.com. I think the question I'm going to ask, you've already given us one. It seems like really making an effort and putting a high value on black male, black female relationships. But you talk in your book about counter-war solutions and strategies. Can you explain what you mean when you say counter-war and provide some of those strategies?
Okay. The counter-warfare that we talk about, all of our suggestions focus on what black people need to do, not on what white people should do. So basically, we came up with these different strategies that we thought anyone could do. And a lot of them are designed as individual actions. For example, the theory of nonviolent non-participation. And basically that means that we don't advocate violence for obvious reasons. For one, it allows the government to target you because you're advocating violence, which totally derails any effort that you may make. And another reason we don't advocate violence is because we don't want to take the path of being immoral and victimizing anyone. So the nonviolent non-participation theory is based on those things, on black people not doing those things that we have been doing. For example, non-participation means stop doing anything that degrades other black people or degrades yourself. For example, patronizing movies such as Norbit and Big Mama's House, buying CDs that refer to black females as the B word or the H word, rap music that describes killing other black people, patronizing stores and businesses that won't hire us. So really a lot of the suggestions we make are really easy suggestions. They may not be fun suggestions, but they're easy because they don't require you to spend any money. You actually spend less money because you stop doing those things that degrade other black people or that degrade yourself. Another one is the idea of doing things that, excuse me, I'm just trying to remember that one, all of the theories. Basically, counter-warfare is about having a psychological revolution. And the revolution has to take place in the mind first because it must come before economics. It must come before political liberation because we can't change anything until we change the way that we think. So a lot of the things that we suggest have to do with changing the way we think, not getting on a picket line, not marching, not talking to white people about what they should do. I believe we first have to change the way that we think, which means we have to educate ourselves and empower ourselves with self-knowledge. And then once we do that, we can change our behavior. Another strategy is the 33 rules of disengagement. It's actually another non-participation activity. For example, we say stop showing off, bragging, and talking too much. You know, we love to profile and style and brag and boast about who we are. But the people that you're bragging to really don't care. So we need to promote more constructive action. Another thing is trying to encourage people to stop having sex with strangers. Stop having sex and bringing babies into the world that you're not prepared to take care of when you're outside a committed marriage. Stop sleeping with white people. And so a lot of our suggestions are suggestions that have to do and with not doing something that's harmful to yourself and not doing something that's harmful to other black people within a system of white supremacy. So we basically focused on the nonviolent resistance, and that just simply means you don't advocate violence, you advocate self-empowerment. And the last strategy that I would touch on would be the become a leader of one, because the only person that you can control is yourself. And once you start to control yourself and start to educate yourself and control it the way you think, you will start to change the way that you act. Once you change the way that you act, you will influence other people and in their behavior, even if they ridicule you at first. Once you start to behave and conduct yourself with a heightened self-respect, you will start to influence other people. And it can become like a virus that spreads throughout the black community. And once people see that other people are not doing something, they have a greater incentive to think about it and not do it themselves.
Wow. You used the phrase psychological revolution as a part of counter-war. I suspect part of that psychological revolution involves becoming much more precise about words, particularly as you say in the book, words are deadly. Can you talk about why, I guess, number one, why non-white people need to become much more attentive and precise with their use of words, and how that will aid in the psychological revolution?
Yes. We used, out of the 13 weapons of mass mind destruction, words were weapon number 3. And we think words are critical to fighting white supremacy because words form the basis of thought, and thought fuels actions. And that's why the white supremacists, they define and redefine everything and everyone, including and especially non-whites. In the book, we have a chapter called Code Words in the White Supremacy System to give the reader examples of how words can actually change your humanity, whether for the good or the bad. For example, during Katrina, if you remember, black evacuees were often referred to as refugees.
Yes, ma'am.
And so a lot of us, we just thought that the media was being disrespectful or callous. No, they were being precise. They saw the black people in New Orleans as refugees. And in fact, I remember reading an article where, I don't know if it was Reverend Jesse Jackson, who challenged the use of the word refugee, and the Associated Press and the New York Times, if I remember correctly, they both defended their use of the word. So are we to believe that the most literate professional media organizations in the world did not understand the meaning of that word? But if we understood the meaning of that word, we would have understood that they were telling us something. So the white supremacists know the meaning of words, but they also know that most people, particularly non-white people, do not pay attention to words and do not understand the real meaning of words. In addition, they make up new words. For example, the word misspoke. A lot of the new words now are deceptive. The word homophobic, deceptive. So if you don't know what words mean, then you don't know how they're being used against you. And that's why we considered words one of the 13 weapons of mass mind destruction.
If you don't mind sharing, what is deceptive about the term homophobic?
Homophobic, and I don't want to take credit for having a deeper understanding. Dr. Barutu basically cleared some issues up about that word for me. I never liked the word, but the problem with homophobic is it indicates that you have a problem. You have a problem because you may not agree with homosexuality. And phobic means an irrational fear. So basically, if you're homophobic, one is actually saying that you're irrational and that you have an irrational fear of homosexuals and homosexuality. And the word is so bandied about that not only do you have an irrational fear, you're a bad person if you don't agree with homosexuality. And so I believe that the word homophobic is used as a tool to silence people, to silence dissent, and to quiet the voices of people who may not agree with homosexuality for whatever reason. And so I think that word, where's the word called heterophobic? If you have homophobic, then you should also conversely have heterophobic. So that's telling me when you don't have a balance in how words are created and how they're being used, particularly new words, then you're basically, the words are political. The origin of the word is political and has very little to do with logic or with understanding. It has more to do with programming.
Do the words assist in racist, white supremacist programming, even if the non-white person doesn't understand what the terms mean, even if they don't know those definitions, so it's going over their head in terms of what the terms mean?
Yes, because they pretty much give you words by picture. They don't just throw the words out there, they create the imagery that goes with the words. For example, the New York Times during Katrina, they ran, it may have been the Washington Post, I don't want to misstate, but it was one of the major newspapers. They had on the front page, they had two pictures side by side, one of white people scavenging for supplies, and a picture of a young black man carrying something on his shoulders, and they called him a looter, and they called the white people scavengers. Well, you don't have to, I guess you do have to know what the word looter means, but my point is that they also give pictures along with the words. They give imagery along with the words, so that even if you don't know what the words mean, the imagery kind of comes as a follow-up to reinforce the idea of what they're trying to say or do, or who is good or who is bad. Because I find it interesting that 4-year-old children, again, back to the black doll, white doll experiment, it's interesting that 4-year-old children, who I can assume have a very, very, very limited ability to understand words, they understand that they're inferior. How do they understand? Through pictures and through images and through the through the implication of something, that it's something that's better than something else. So the words are very important, but there's always images that go along with those words. The tone of the voice, the tone of how the words are being spoken, also have a lot to do with how you interpret the words, even if you don't understand them.
Again, context of white supremacy, our guest, one of the co-authors of Trojan Horse, Death of a Dark Nation, Pamela, and the website again, TrojanHorse1.com. You have a chapter in the book, Black Power Within the System of White Supremacy. What does black power mean? What is black power in a system of white supremacy?
Well, black power, in my opinion, does not exist within a system of white supremacy. Not in the actual, when you look at what power actually represents. I do believe, however, that individual black people have the power of individuals, and that those individuals can come together and create a form of power. But power, in my opinion, is the power of having institutions that reinforce the power of the individual. And in a white supremacy system, there are no black institutions that are more powerful than white institutions. Even when you look at the historically black colleges, black people do not control those colleges. So the black organizations, black people do not fund those organizations. Therefore, we do not control those organizations. Black leaders, they do not work at our behest. They work at the behest of the white supremacists. So, in my opinion, power is as power does. And if you have power, you know it. And if you don't have power, you also need to understand that you don't have power. And I think that that's sometimes a very difficult concept to get across because it demoralizes people. They don't want to feel like they're powerless. But you're not powerless. And there's a difference between being powerless and not having black power. I don't believe that black power exists. And I'll give you just a few examples of what we say in the book. We say that power is controlling the financial, political, and educational institutions so you and your kind benefit. Power is the ability to control your own images and the images of those who are less powerful than you are. Power is the ability to determine who goes to jail for what crime and for how long. Power is the ability to vote in an election and still have that vote counted. Power is other people coming to you to get what they need and you deciding how much they will get. Power is the ability to feed yourself without depending on others. Power is the ability to generate and produce what you need to survive, which includes your own infrastructures and necessities, electricity, gasoline, water, housing, food, clothing, weapons, schools, universities, currency, banking, and hospitals without depending on others for your survival. And so we go on to explain what we consider power. And in a white supremacy system, I don't see that exist. I don't see those kind of powerful institutions existing for non-white people.
We have a lot of folks that have called in. I want to make sure we get some questions. I did want to throw out for people who are listening, Dr. Mowalimu K. Baruti. I guess, Pamela, she referenced his work, and it helped her get a better understanding of the term homophobic. He's been here 3 times, and specifically he was here in February to talk about his book, Homosexuality and the Effeminization of African Males. You have concerns or some confusion around the term homophobic, homosexual activity, might be a good program to check out. I wanted to ask before we went to the phone lines, just entertainment. I really try to make an effort to be on my P's and Q's when I'm watching movies or television to see what the racist white supremacist agenda is. This is a quote that was in Predators, just came out last Friday. A lot of money, made over $20 million, so a lot of people saw this film. The quote in the film was, and it was given by a white man, the quote in the film was actually the hero of the movie, so not just any character, the hero of the movie gave this line. There is no hunting like the hunting of men, especially armed men. And those who have done this long enough to like it, they never care for anything else after. From Predators, and actually it's quoted from Ernest Hemingway. What do you think about that line in the context of white supremacy being said by a white man?
I think it's very interesting and very revealing. I believe that movies are always showing us what is really going on. And the clever thing about it is it gives the white supremacists a chance, an opportunity to tell the truth, knowing that the public won't see it as anything but entertainment. But I believe on a karmic level, they must tell the truth sometimes. And so they use movies and television programs to say truth, to speak truth, but also they speak truth without consequences because the people do not understand or pay attention or even realize that it's not just a line in a movie. I give an example. I can't think of the movie, but it was a movie I would, and maybe I shouldn't give the example. If I think of it, I will. But yes, I believe that quote that you just gave actually revealed the mentality of what we're doing, and I think black people really need to understand that white supremacy is not just about genetic survival. It's not just about maintaining the power and privilege over non-whites. It is entertainment. It is enjoyment. No one could do this for the length of time that it's being done and not enjoy it. It's a psychological addiction, just like crack.
Back this up with quote number 2, and this is from white people, very powerful suspected racists, voted this film The Hurt Locker, Academy Award winner, Best Picture. The opening quote of the movie, first thing you see when the movie begins, the rush of battle is often a potent and lethal addiction, for war is a drug. I would just say that the only war on the planet is racism, white supremacy. Could be incorrect. Going to the phone lines, a person who called in, I believe this is Mr. Nero, one of the investors in the cows. Mr. Nero, if you have any questions for Pamela, your line is open, sir.
Not at this time, Gus. But thanks for coming on the show, Pamela. Been appreciated.
You're welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening in, Mr. Nero. A person who called in with a blocked number. If you called with a blocked number, your line is open.
Hello?
Yes, sir. Mr. 909, we can hear you.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming on the show, Pamela. It's very, very interesting. I had a couple of things I wanted to ask you about, but what I found interesting is the fact that maybe you could talk more because I didn't get a clear understanding of it, but I found it interesting that the anonymous author and the authors and the fact that the material was to be given away, and I was just thinking that if you could speak maybe on like when people were trying to do projects and it seemed like the anonymous piece and the fact that the author wanted it to be given away, it kind of got it like a buzz. And do you think that people, when they're beginning projects and starting different things, should they be trying to create that kind of buzz and be thinking of creative ideas like that?
I believe there's advantages and disadvantages to being anonymous. I believe it can be more of a burden than an asset, or liability than an asset, because nowadays people want to know the personality or the people behind whatever's going on. I'm glad we did it because it reduced the amount of ego in the project. I think it could possibly give a buzz to a project. I do think that given the nature, the lack of privacy in this society, that the more silently you can move, the farther you can get. I think when you announce to the world what you're going to do and who you are, and every step of every plan, you actually sabotage your efforts. If you want to compare what I'm saying to maybe a real-life example, for example, at work, you can observe white people and black people, and black people are always telegraphing and announcing their intentions. Whether whatever it is, we're always talking and we're always telling on how we feel, what we're going to do, who we are, what we have. But if you observe the white people, they don't do that. And when you look at the system of white supremacy, it often moves very silently and very stealthily. And I think that for black people who are trying to do a project to promote justice, we have to focus less on ego gratification and more on what we're trying to accomplish. And perhaps anonymity helps to do that, because if you're not getting pats on the back because everybody thinks, well, look what you did, then maybe you can focus on what you're trying to do. I hope I answered the question.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I just was, for me, credibility, it seems like when you don't want that fame and, you're like, just, it doesn't matter what my name is, just, the information is what you want people to have. That seems to give a lot of credibility as far as how I see it. But, yeah. I'm
glad to hear that, because our fear was that people would think that because we didn't stand out and tell who we were, that we were ashamed or we didn't want to defend it, and that wasn't the case at all. So I'm glad that it wasn't interpreted that way by you. So I'm really glad about that.
Gus, can I ask another question?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
About the entertainment as crack. I was just reading something yesterday. It was talking about the fact that they said I think the blacks are the impoverished. They're the most people that use this wireless internet, this phone internet for the phone, and that basically Facebook and all these different things like Twitter and stuff like that. Black people are like the main ones using these things.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Right, I said, that doesn't make sense. Like, how can low-income people be the main people that's using this wireless internet?
You know, I'm sorry. Go ahead. I didn't hear you. Okay.
But yeah, when you said entertainment is crack, I just thought of that little thing. So yeah, it seems like as soon as they come out with something to entertain us, we be on it.
That's true. But you know, one thing too is, unfortunately, everything they say we have to take with a grain of salt, because everything is designed to create a perception, and we have to look underneath the level of what we're being told. For example, they're saying that black people are using this and they're low income. Let's just play the devil's advocate and assume that that's not true. What is the impression given then? That black people, even though they're complaining about being unemployed, even though they're saying they don't have money, how are they on the internet? And that's the impression that you got, was how can all these low-income black people afford it? Well, if you're trying to build up a consensus of reducing the empathy for the suffering, the massive suffering of black people who now have an unofficial unemployment rate of over 35%, if you're trying to build a consensus to make people less sympathetic and less empathetic by portraying these poor black people as having these luxuries, then maybe that was the agenda behind that article that may or may not be true. I remember reading an article where they once said that black people feel they're doing better under Obama or some such thing. And then my question was, what black people? Who did you poll? What was the purpose of that article? And then if I looked at it, I didn't believe it was true. I believe it was more misinformation. And that, again, was to make white people think in these times of financial hardship that Obama is helping black people do better than white people. So my point is simply that everything in the media, particularly when it deals with black people and non-whites, is designed to promote white supremacy. And if we know that they don't tell the truth, then we need to question everything they say and everything they write, because we know that lies are being told.
Excellent questions, 909. Let's see. Person who called in, last four digits, 5128. 5128, your line is open.
Yes, hi, Gus. Unfortunately, I was late to the broadcast, so I'll refrain from asking any questions. Thank you. Okay. Great broadcast, though.
Thank you for listening in, sir. Appreciate it. Person who called in, last four digits, 7908. 7908, your line is open.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
It's a great program. Very informative. You touched on something that I think some people would probably miss when you talked about karma. I have a question as it pertains to that. I'm not too familiar with the law of karma in terms of the reverse effects of it. But a gentleman that I speak with on various occasions made a point one time that there is a law in nature that says in order for me to be successful in doing something, that I have to put into the energy what it is I want to do. For example, if I want to do something, if I want to harm somebody and be successful in it, I have to let that person know that I have intent to harm them in whatever way I choose, and it's up to that person to counter my intent. Are you familiar with any law of that nature in reference to how white people continue to let us know what they are doing, therefore clearing them from the consequence of the action because we have been given the information to counter it, but we refuse to act on the information that was given?
That's an excellent question, and I agree with the basic premise of it. I believe that that there is a karmic law, and I'm no expert on the universe or karmic law, but I think it's a deep down instinctive feeling of a law by which whatever you put out, you will get in return. And I believe that there's a part of karma is you do have to tell the truth sometimes. And the flip side of that is if someone is telling you and showing you what their intentions are, then you have an obligation and a responsibility to act on that information. And I think what worries me as far as the elimination of white supremacy is collectively black people know a lot more than we act like we do. But in acknowledging that we know this, it requires us to take responsibility for it. And I think that our somewhat collective unwillingness to take responsibility for it and to acknowledge it as a reality and stay in this false reality has actually lengthened the prison sentence. So I think that even though we're victims, we still have the responsibility of knowing and responsibility of acting on that knowledge. And I think that part of the karmic price we pay and are paying right now is we have not taken up our share in the responsibility for what is happening to us. And I believe that that's something that we're going to have to do. In addition, if we're short-circuiting our liberation process by imitating our oppressors, by taking on their ways. And as long as we continue to do that, we actually lengthen our incarceration in this nation and in the world.
Non-Mighty Wick, if you have any questions, your line should be open. Yep, your line is open. Non-Mighty Wick, did you have any questions, or are you just listening? Okay, I'll assume you're listening. If you change your mind, just press 1 and gotcha. I did want to ask with regards to most or typical black person in the system of white supremacy, do you think they understand that we are in a global system that is dominated by white supremacy?
No, I don't. I don't think they understand at all. And you get that impression from the things that people say. You know, a lot of people do not even realize we're at war and that our community is at war, despite the evidence and despite the mounting casualties, despite all of the evidence that says that we are that a war is being conducted against us. We've got there's some people in the black collective that do not understand that. And I don't think it's a lack of intelligence. I think that the programming is so systemic and so long-standing and so thorough that we've begun to see the world and ourselves through white eyes. And the integration and assimilation has also contributed to the fact that we don't see ourselves as we exist. We see ourselves as almost pseudo-white people. And so I don't think we do understand. But I do think that those of us who do have some understanding of it sometimes prefer to stay in denial of it because it's, number one, it's a frightening thing, And 2, it's a demoralizing thing if you allow it to demoralize you. And 3, the most important is once you know, you're responsible for that knowledge. And responsibility is something that a lot of times is avoided. You know, and I know because I avoid it myself. So a lot of times you avoid the knowledge that requires you to change your life and requires you to do something different than what you are doing.
I guess can you share with some of our listeners, because I do not want people just listening to this program and not doing anything. I hope people get this information and adjust their thoughts, speech, and actions in accordance with the fact that we are in a system of racism, white supremacy. Do you have some suggestions for how victims can help deal with just a very justified fear of white people and a fear of maybe getting in trouble or being harmed if they make an effort to combat racism, white supremacy?
You know, that's a very real and legitimate fear. I think the first place to start, in my opinion, would be to educate yourselves. There's certainly no risk in doing that, and that is to take advantage of the information that's out there. And you can do that, and you can do that in the privacy of your home. And the funny thing about it is, once you get over the shock, I remember when I first started listening to Neely Fuller, and some of the things he said hurt. I remember one thing in particular he said about black women, and it hurt. And I remember listening to the tape cassette or the CD I had in my car, and I turned it off. But the funny thing about pain is, that kind of pain is, as time goes along and you become more aware and you gain a greater understanding, you become more powerful. And the fear transforms into knowledge, or at least a sense of self-empowerment. You know, you're never going to feel great about it, you know, because it's such a tragic reality. And it's a tragic reality, and it's been that way for a long time. And you'll have periods where you'll be angry. But the whole thing is the more knowledge that you take in, the more powerful you become inside. And at some given point in time, you will not be willing to turn back and go back. You'll have to move forward. And that moving forward may require you to take action. It may require you to get involved, or it may require you to write a book. But the one thing you'll do is you will become stronger. And it's up to the individual how far they want to go. But there is one thing that's really true, in my opinion, is if you're not willing to fight for your freedom, you don't deserve it. And so at some point in time, you may reach a point where it's better to die on one's feet than live on one's knees. And all throughout history, people have put their lives on the line because of their beliefs were so strong. And I really, truly think that we have to learn to get past the fear. And not so much the fear of dying, but the fear of living as a slave, which is a very powerful incentive to change what is going on. I think that's the thing we should be most afraid of, is having the next generation and the next generation go through what we went through. That should be our biggest fear. But I do respect and understand the fear of being harmed. No one wants to be harmed. But we're going to have to learn, in my opinion, to get past that fear.
I'm curious. What did Mr. Fuller say about black females that upset you so?
Well, what he said was, and the truth is always more painful than a lie. If I remember correctly, he said that he was describing black women and white men, and the sexual connotation. In other words, that black women, if I'm trying to remember correctly, to some effect, he said that black women I think I remember he said something about that being basically the biggest secret in the black community, were the sexual relationship between the black female and the white male. And as you can imagine, Mr. Fuller, pretty much it was blunt, his dissection of it. And I don't really remember the exact words, but I do remember that it had something to do with the fact that this is something that black women don't want to talk about, but pretend that it's not happening. I guess we talk a lot about black men and white women, but we don't talk very much about black women and white men and those secret, illicit sexual relationships that go on behind closed doors, often behind closed doors. And so a lot of what I got from it to some degree was we black women, we were being hypocritical. We were slamming the black men for being victims of white supremacy, for being brainwashed, when we were just as brainwashed. Only difference is that our stuff was more undercover and more hidden. And Mr. Fuller, being the blunt and factual and logical person that he is, didn't leave any room to hide from that hypocrisy.
Do you feel what his comments about these secret liaisons between black females and white men, do you feel what he had to say was accurate?
Yes. That's why it was offensive. Because we had positioned ourselves at a position from a position of moral superiority. We're more loyal, we're more this and we're more that, but we are just as brainwashed and confused as the black men are. And so it pretty much eliminated that foundation of moral superiority.
Oh.
So it really just encouraged you to take a good look. I mean, if you're looking at black women, for example, and I'm speaking in general terms, I'm not accusing anybody of anything. I mean, look at what we consider beautiful. I mean, in terms of not so much what we consider beautiful, but, the things that we have internalized. We are just as quick to make fun of someone who is too dark, or someone whose hair is nappy, or whose nose is broad. And yet we're the ones that are penalized for that same kind of beauty standard. But we don't acknowledge that we're just as guilty of promoting it as we claim black men are.
Very interesting. Very interesting. Appreciate the honesty. Well, I think I've heard a lot of people say that listening to Mr. Fuller, and I think just getting accurate information, I don't think it's Mr. Fuller, I think it's just getting accurate information about the pitiful state of black people within the system of white supremacy. They have a saturation point where it's like, I can't take it anymore. I got to turn this off or whatever. I've seen the people that tend to progress more. They get over that moment and they kind of process it and accept it as true, and then, understanding, we are in a system of white supremacy. That's what's to blame for this. Wow. Thoroughly enjoyed the broadcast, and I want to apologize for the tech issues. I definitely would love to have you back on the program once that is resolved, so we can have a clearer program to share more information from the book, if you would be interested.
Yes, absolutely. I would love to come back and hopefully do a better job of explaining what we said in the book and answering any questions, and also learning, because I'm still learning too. So sometimes the callers can actually educate. They can educate us as well.
Oh, for sure. I have learned a lot from folks listening in. I want to give the web address for the book, TrojanHorse1.com. Again, TrojanHorse1.com. Generally what we do on the program, a lot of people call in, and I open the phone lines up just to chat with the listeners, share constructive information, and that's what I'm going to do. I'll leave it up to you. Normally, if it's somebody, a guest or what have you, I would normally just exit from the program. And
I'm still learning. How are you?
If you want to stay and hang out, feel free. Everybody that called in, your line is open. If you would like to stay and hang out, Pamela, feel free.
You mean there's some people that are waiting? There's some callers?
We have 6 people who called in. I believe these are all black people, victims of white supremacy, and we normally, for the last 60 minutes of the program, just chat about things that were shared on the program, exchange views on white supremacy. If you would like to stay and chat, I'm sure they would be glad to have you participate. But if you have things to do, no problem.
I would love to if you say that there's people who are interested in dialoguing.
Still learning. How are you?
There you go.
No.
Okay.
Okay. No, that's fine.
Okay. Everybody that called in, your line is open. Just make sure that the background noise is down so we don't have distortion on the line or anything. But if you called in, your line is open. And I see hands went up. Mr. Nero, your line is open. Feel free.
Greetings.
Greetings.
Pamela, I am just ecstatic. It has taken, and I may be incorrect, maybe someone else has said what you have said, but it has taken, it seems to me, close to 2 years for a black female to admit what y'all been doing with those white men. Because I could have thrown y'all under the bus a long time ago, but I said, no, I'm going to wait. I'm going to wait to see if a black female finally comes on the cows and tells the honest truth, how y'all can creep around. Because I didn't caught you. Not you, but you know what I mean? I have caught y'all out there creeping. Picked you up from the hotels.
Oh, my goodness.
And you have that look on your face like, uh-oh, he got me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I can understand what you're saying because, that, like I said, that's one of the biggest secrets, sexual secrets in the black community, and we talk about it in our second book in detail.
I hope Mr. Renegade turns that into a sound clip. I'm marking this day. I'm going to go play lotto. Must be my lucky day.
Oh, well, I'm glad I added so much to your day.
Oh, you sure did. I'm just ecstatic.
Oh.
This is a current theme on the program, and I think some of this was motivated because we just had a program with black males and sexual intercourse with white women was a dominant theme in the program with black males, and some of the females got a little rowdy about that, and were a little upset about that, and they raised the issue that black females are not as concerned with this issue. It doesn't dominate their discussions on racism. White men just aren't a concern. This was said. This could be a sound clip too. This was said. It's not as much of a concern. White men aren't as sexually appealing or desirable to black females, and I remember that, I had that in my notes to get out, and that was one I forgot. So I'm glad Pamela filled the void because Gus did drop the ball. I heard Mr. Fuller say that, and I was going to mention that on the program. But outstanding. I did want to support Sister Nefertari's efforts. If you all give me 30 seconds to promote her commercial before the switchboard goes out, that'll be a nice break, and then we can get back if Mr. Nero would like to gloat some more. Right back, context of white supremacy.
Okay. The second annual Nat Turner Day Weekend Celebration 2010, The Resurrection of Haiti, Friday, August 20th to Sunday, August 22nd, at the Church of the Advocate, 1801 West Diamond Street, Philadelphia, PA, sponsored by the Children of Southampton, featuring Umar Abdullah Johnson, the Irritated Genie of Southeast, Sister Nefertari, Mary Mu Nzinga, the Universal African Dance and Drum Ensemble, the Lest We Forget Black Holocaust Slave Museum, and a special feature, the Nat Turner Day African Insurrection Musical with Brothers Keeper, the African Marketplace, and much, much more. The cost for the entire weekend, $50 for black adults, $25 for black students and children under 12, and $25 for black elders 65 and older. For more information, contact the Children of Southampton at www.ourcause.com. That's www.ourcause.com. www.whitesupremacy.com or 888-817-3235. That's toll free at 888-817-3235.
Anybody, I've been fighting for 20,000 years, man. I'm tired. We've been fighting 20,000 years and we ain't been able to sell this stuff, man. We ain't gonna sell it.
Context of White Supremacy, Gus T Renegade, and our guest, Pamela, one of the co-authors of Trojan Horse, Death of a Dark Nation. Any of the other callers, you should be on the line, Pamela as well. Mr. Nero, if you had any more cackling to get in about today's revelation, feel free.
Gus, I just wish you could see the looks on their faces when I catch them.
Wow. Why do you think, this is to anybody, or I guess I should pitch to Pamela, why do you think this hypocrisy is there, particularly with regards to black females and white men?
I believe it's due to the historical nature of our sexual relationships. I believe that's one reason that white males are so sneaky about it. Their attraction to us is it has to do with the historical nature of sex between the black female and the white male. It's always been a point of degradation for black women, and it's always been a point of sexual exploitation by white men. So I believe that both parties have this duplicity involved in their sexual encounters.
Can I also just say this? I suspect PG&E bills are getting paid, car notes are getting paid, insurance is getting paid, all kind of things are getting paid.
So you're basically saying a lot of times it's prostitution?
I wouldn't call it that, but I'm just saying when I have exposed or seen certain things, all of a sudden there's some other things that tend to pop up as well. You know, just all of a sudden some free resources become available.
Well, I think that's typical of non-white females in general regarding the white male. And economics always plays a role in various forms of prostitution, and I do consider that prostitution if you're exchanging sex for anything material or financial. I think that to be fair to my sisters, I have to also add that we grew up watching the same madness that black men grew up watching. That the people on television were white males who were doing this and doing that. All the imagery, all of the words, all of the white supremacist teachings, show the white male as, he's the hero. He's the person, the object of desire, Hello? Hello? Uh-oh.
Yeah, it's just someone's phone's probably disconnected.
Oh.
You still there?
Yes, I'm still here.
Goes to return. It happens sometimes.
Okay.
The phone call just drops and the phone will ring.
Okay. But just to answer that question, I just believe this is common behavior all throughout the planet regarding white males and non-white females.
I look at it as just how
liaisons. I'm sorry. Mm-hmm.
No, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying these secretive relationships, I think, happen. But I think when it comes to the instance of black women, I think black women have a sense of shame about it, which accounts for some of the element, because women are more defined by their sexuality than men are, and so a woman's whole reputation rests on her sexual behavior. And I think that might be where black women are more likely to hide it than black men are.
I look at it from the standpoint where, as Brother Neely Fuller says, that there's only one man in the system. Mm-hmm. It's just like the same dynamic appears in the black church, mm-hmm. in terms of the preacher, the pastor, has more access to women, to the women in the church, mm-hmm. because of his power position. He's the advisor, the counselor, the money manager. He's all those things that embody power. And I just think it's a part of our brainwash conditioning. I don't necessarily put no more fault on sisters than I do on brothers who do the same thing with white women, and maybe even in secret, or white women who may do the same thing. Because it's a psychological imbalance on the part of everybody involved. The passion that may come from that sexual encounter between a white man and black woman, is almost animalistic in and of itself. But that need to be desired in such a dynamic way from some sisters, may contribute. And just the mere fact that they are brainwashed, just like we're retarded. We are a retarded people. So everything that we do in relation to white people and one another, for the most part, is a result of our retardation.
I agree. I think there's one more thing I would add with black women. There's also as much a need. I would say sometimes when black women are dealing with white men, they're also looking for that white validation that black men are trying to get from white women, and that is, here's this man who's not supposed to desire me, who's paying attention to me. So his attention in the minds of a black female who wants that white validation, his attention carries more weight because he is a white man in a white supremacy system, which means his opinion matters more than a non-white person's opinion. And I think this is true for non-white females other than black females, is the white male is, this whole system is built on white validation. White people determine who has value and who doesn't. So people who are vulnerable to that need for white validation, male or female, can only be validated, really, by a white person. And one thing I'd like to add when it comes to black men and white females, I would like to say that even though the male in a male-dominated society has a superior position, when it comes to white supremacy, the white female is always in charge. She is the one that does the choosing. The black male never chooses her.
Absolutely.
She is the one that's in control. He is never in control of her. And even in the cases of domestic violence where the white female is, say, for example, being abused by her black partner, she is still the most powerful one in that relationship because she is white and he is not. And I would like to say that if black people really understood the dynamic of these white-black relationships, and that white person is always in a superior position, is always the most powerful person in that relationship, and is the one who does the choosing whether or not that relationship is going to move forward or not, or even going to exist. That white person, generally speaking, is the one that makes that decision, because black people automatically defer to white people. I mean, it's almost built in. It's almost inherent at this point. So if a white person shows you attention, the average black person in general a lot of times feels flattered. So that's all I would like to add, that even despite the fact that it's a man, if he's a black male, he is in a subordinate position to that white female. In my opinion.
And it may be, and I'm not unwilling to critically look at this. It may be just a personal desire on my part to find a kind of soothing lotion so it doesn't feel so painful when it is that you're saying. So I'm not unwilling to look at that.
That white validation is big time lotion for non-white people. And again, I hope people pay attention to words. We're talking about racism, white supremacy, which is mistreatment based on skin color. And he said a soothing lotion. Man, oh man.
Yeah, that actually is the way it feels, I think, for a black person who does not want to deal with the realities, or at least is is so injured by the realities that the white person offers a respite from their reality. It gives them a false sense of it's a false comfort, you know. And I think that a lot of black people, they feel like with two black people, there's too much black reality. With a white person, you can reinvent yourself and pretend to be somebody else. And I think that's the appeal of white people, is they allow you to recreate yourself into a false persona where you're not as black and as despised as you would be with a black partner. I think it's an attempt to escape reality.
That's a powerful statement.
Pamela, this is caller 909. You know, I started listening to this show, The C.O.W.S, and it changed my views on females. Basically, Dr. Wilson was the only female that I thought, you know, I could have a conversation with about, you know, racism, white supremacy, basically. You know, a serious conversation about, you know, racism, white supremacy, the 9 areas of people activity. So, like, when we had females come on the show, and they were informed about the system, and just like what you said today about, you know, the relationships that black women have with white males, and just breaking down a lot of the things that you said, especially about this color obsession. Do you find it a rarity, or within your female friends and stuff and family, is it something rare to have a non-white female, black in particular, or do you just see it as, in general, black people, non-white people don't have a handle on this issue? But is it something about females that, I don't know, what do you think?
Do you mean why they are not, why that is not a common conversation?
Yeah, especially, like I said, just me, I had wrote them off, basically, but now, you know, it's not like that now, but, you know, it's because of this show, actually, but...
I think that's a really good question. I've asked the same question. I've asked other people the same question. It's rare for me to meet women, black women, who are involved or interested in really dialoguing seriously about this subject. And that's a really good question. The only thing I can think is that perhaps they think that that's not something that women do, that they are more concerned, in my experience, most of the women that I know are more concerned with the box they live in, and that includes family, man or no man, food, entertainment, work, home, sex, children. And that does seem to be the box typically that I find most of the majority of women that I've met, that seems to be their... They seldom look outside their box. But that's just been my experience.
Yeah, I was thinking about the soap operas. Like, I've never seen a soap opera in my life, but I know women. I've been in a lot of different places, and females all over the world, they love the soap operas.
I think women, we love fantasy because we've been taught so much fantasy. Even especially relationships. I mean, the marriage, my wedding day is my most important day in my life. Why is that? Because it's a fantasy day. Why did I get married? I thought it was going to make my life perfect. I think women are encouraged from a very early age to focus on fantasy more than reality. I really, otherwise I can't really explain it either. Because it's not a lack of intelligence. It's not a lack of literacy. Perhaps it's a lack of validation. Maybe women don't feel they're going to be validated for having that conversation, so they don't have it. I don't know. I know I'm considered an odd egg.
Yeah,
so,
I mean, it's pretty sexy, actually. I don't know if that's a good word, but
it's a good word.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's very, very interesting to have a female talk the way that you do. And I was just thinking, it's a stereotype too that females that aren't that attractive are more on the you know, racist white supremacist tip or whatever. But I don't know. It's very attractive though. And
sorry, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
I'm sorry. Who was you gonna say?
Oh, you go ahead. No, I was only going to go quickly that I had read somewhere where girls start losing. You know, when they're in school, it's okay to be smart. Then they reach that certain plateau, that age, and all of a sudden it's not good. It's not considered attractive or sexy for girls to be smart. And I wonder if they make that shift then, away from cerebral pursuits. You know, like I wonder if the whole system is designed to make them think it's not sexy to be a certain way.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know what kind of men don't find that attractive, because I find that extremely attractive. But
yeah.
And could you talk about the color obsession, especially when it comes to, because Gus, the host, was talking about, you know, we've had some guests that really don't like white people, you know, talk about them in ways that I'm not sure, I don't know, but I've never taken that stance, even though I definitely am somebody that wants justice, you know, right now, you know, but I think that, like you said, we don't want we don't want to do the same thing that they did.
Exactly.
So, yeah, could you, how did that form, that concept of the color obsession, and how do you see it?
Yeah, I understand the feeling, and I've had my rants and raves continuously about white people, but it's a strange thing. If you go too far down that road, you start to feel ashamed, and you start to feel, it starts to dehumanize you, because now you're trying to dehumanize other people. And I think if you're a spiritual person, and I don't mean a religious, but a spiritual person, you have an internal warning system that says this is not correct. And I think you have to listen to it, you know, when you're going too far. Okay, because every day you have to interact with people. And all of us, non-whites, have to interact with white people because they control everything. And if you're going to have it in your heart that you hate them and dislike them on sight, then how are you going to function? So it's really not for their benefit that I don't promote that kind. It's for my benefit. And it's because I don't want to see black people carry any more karmic dead baggage than we have to. We've got to try to rise above this system that we're in, that, and the more integrated we get, the sicker we get. And we can't afford to follow the ways that have been destructive to us. We have to find a different way. But I do understand the feelings, and I do understand it. But I feel like, you know, the best thing you can do is don't complicate the issue by having sex with white people.
I had a question. Do you think the internal warning system, do you think that could be a part of the programming with regards to non-white people being conditioned to cater to white people? And I believe I must say it the same way I said it yesterday, it being an anathema for non-white people to even dream of being in opposition to white people.
I think it is, and I think that's what makes it so tricky, because when you think about it logically, it doesn't make sense to not dislike or resent someone who's mistreating you. It doesn't really make sense. It's actually self-disrespecting. But can you create justice if you harbor hate. So I feel like this. I feel like I'm a recovering white supremacy addict who will never be cured. I will always be sick as long as I'm in a white supremacy system. So the only thing I can do is try progressively day by day to get better. But I will never be well the same way a crack addict never gets over the crack addiction, and the same way a TB patient can't get well inside of a TB ward. I know I'm sick. I accept that. The only thing I can do is try not to get sicker. So some of the stuff that I believe is probably, I know it is, tainted with white supremacy. But I don't have a cure.
I think Pamela.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think you touched on the cure and what Gus just said. It's disrespect not to respect your enemy. I mean, why would you want to beat up on somebody that's weak, or in that sense of, I guess I just thought of something from my past. But yeah, your enemy should, if you're not gonna oppose them if you just kind of belittle them. Oh, them crackers, those crackers, they weak, and they're this, that, and the other. Mm-hmm. So then you won't be able to oppose them effectively.
That's true. And Mr. Fuller talks about that is we got to stop lying to ourselves. White supremacists are not stupid people. And when people try to diminish the brilliance of their plan, then you can't fight it because you've already underestimated it. And in the book, in the Trojan horse, we have a poem. And one of the things that is said is anyone who announces their premature victory will soon be defeated. So the one thing we have to do, and it's very difficult in my opinion, is we have to tell ourselves the truth. They got us. They have beat us. The war isn't over, but so far they're winning. And if we don't acknowledge that, then it makes no sense. Because if we were smarter than them, then how are we in this condition?
I like what Dr. King said, if I may interject, and is the fact that I don't have to like everybody. And it's almost to the point where I want to say I don't have to love everybody either. Brother Nathan Fuller says that it's guaranteed victim's qualifications, that the victim has a right to feel whichever way they choose to feel and say and interpret their response to the system in any way that they deem necessary. If you have children and someone harmed your children or took the life of your child, it's going to be it's very hard without conditioning to tell someone that you have to love that person. And love is a powerful energy. It's just that we've taken too much time expressing that energy towards others in the present, because I find it hard to believe that our ancestors, when dealing with the European, after they came to a conclusion that these people mean to do us harm, continue to practice what would be considered humane interaction with them, without at some point taking up arms. And I'm not advocating taking up arms because that's a battle we can't win. Right. But hate, as Dr. Francis said, is a wasted energy. And I believe it's a wasted energy when it is dwelt on, when it is what fuels you. But at some point, you have to take inventory of your victimizer, and you have to deal with that. You have to look at, you can work around white people all day, but I think that there's a certain level of building up a wall around you that makes it necessary that it says, I need not to like these people for my own benefit. Because if I allow myself to like them, then I allow myself more opportunity to be victimized by them. Because when you like someone, you begin to let your guard down. So as a protective measure for me, I must not like white people.
Okay.
You know what I mean? So that I will not allow myself to be victimized, with my own involvement in the victimization. So I think that it's just one of those things that, when brothers come on and sisters come on and they talk about white people in a negative way, it doesn't bother me, because it's their right as a victim to spew that type of language, though it may be considered negative to many. But as a victim myself, I understand. Even for the person who comes on and speaks on behalf of the Tea Party, that individual is also a victim who is given into the system. In order for me to even have compassion on his retardation, I have to understand that he's been victimized. He's been conditioned to speak the way that he does. And because he is a victim, then there is an opportunity that he may understand one day his victimization. He may never. But because he's a victim, he may. You follow what I'm saying?
Yes, I do.
So,
have you ever heard of this syndrome? I mean, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, I'm done. Go ahead.
You ever heard of this syndrome called the Stockholm Syndrome?
Yes.
Okay. That kind of, to me, is so significant, and we're going to include it in the next book, and that is, that to me accurately describes the process when you spoke of the slaves and how they got to the point of, even though they had all the evidence in the world of what they were dealing with, that they wound up developing positive feelings because of that Stockholm Syndrome, which basically essentially says once you strip someone of their freedom, and in the slave's case of their identity, and isolate them from the world, they become so dependent they would develop a sense of gratitude toward their kidnappers just for allowing them to live. And I think that Stockholm Syndrome is still true today, that black people are so dependent on white people that they're afraid of looking honestly and at them and at them collectively and seeing what is really there. And I also think I agree with you when it comes to people expressing negative feelings. Somebody once said to me about our book, they said that they could tell in certain places where the person that was writing was angry. And so I said, well, if you're not angry about what has happened to you and your people, you're not normal. So to me, anybody that says, I don't harbor any resentment, I don't harbor any dislike, I don't harbor any ill will toward whites collectively, that is either a dishonest person or an insane person, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. But I was just thinking about that refugee piece where they didn't like the way it sounded, but at the same time, the meaning was more accurate.
Yes.
You know what I mean? So I'm just saying, I definitely understand where people are coming from, and they have a guaranteed to say what they want as a victim, but I mean, is it really accurate? So if you're gonna, I just, the accuracy is important.
I have a question for you. I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
No, you finish.
Oh, I was just gonna say I have an understanding definitely of that, but we have to be accurate if we're gonna effectively oppose our enemy.
I was just going to say I had a question for you. Why do you think the news media used the word refugee to describe black people in Louisiana?
I think actually what you said is that they're in the business of words, and they knew what they were talking about. It was the Al Sharptons and the Jesse Jacksons that basically placated black people into not taking the legal definition or the most accurate definition of their situation. So it was more an emotional thing. But I think they knew what they were talking about because that's their business is to write accurately.
I agree. I'd go a little further. I think in the book we talk about that word refugee and what the definition is. And the definition, according to the dictionary, is a person outside their country of natural origin who is unwilling or unable to return to their land of origin. And so if you're saying refugee in place of evacuee, which is evacuee is a citizen, what they were essentially saying is the black people of New Orleans, black people in the United States who descended from slaves are not citizens. So they were actually telling us, in my opinion, that they know we're not citizens, but they know that we don't know. And you're right when you say they used the Jessies and the Jacksons and the Sharptons to confuse us and to make it appear that they're advocating something, an injustice, when in reality they're just there as a smokescreen to keep you from thinking about the words that are being used against you.
Right, and Malcolm used to talk about us going to the world court and different things like that to make different appeals. And with that terminology of refugee, we could have appealed to other countries as refugees to help us. Like, look, these people ain't helping us. Can we get, what's up? Can we get a little help from Malaysia's, whoever, basically? You know what I'm saying? Cuba.
And it would have been an eye-opening revelation for black people to realize that they are not citizens, that we are not citizens. And I think that that's something that we really need to open our eyes.
Yeah, I like what you said. You used the term brilliant. I don't know if you can hear me.
No, I didn't catch that.
Brilliantly destructive, and then you said the gift when you were talking about the Greeks, and Gus asked you about the title of the book, and you said the Greeks, it was a gift of destruction. And I just thought that was pretty poetic, really, because, a gift is not supposed to be destructive, you know what I'm saying? And then you said they were brilliantly destructive.
I mean, it's a brilliant plan. They've managed to take 10% of the world's population and control 90%. That's pretty brilliant. And got the 90%, at least 90% of those, to cooperate with their own oppression. Because they could not, 10% could not control 90% without the 90% cooperating. That's what people forget. You have to cooperate with white supremacy for it to exist. It's like being in a room with three people, and one person says, I'm more beautiful than you are. If the other two people don't agree, how can that third person prove that they're more beautiful? They can't. So how do you prove superiority if nobody else is buying into it?
That's just the control of the minds. I was going to ask you about being around young girls, because they I'm sure you would agree that, and females don't like to hear it, but when they have the weaves and the the blonde hair and stuff like that, even the beautiful track stars, you watch track and field, and these are like these females are like gorgeous, but then their hair is just a mess, and it's like how can you even see that as being beautiful? But do you, as far as being around young girls, do you try to, because the natural, I was just thinking about that part, like
try to influence them?
Yeah.
I wanted to toss in one comment, if I could, really quick, to make sure, don't want to minimize the awesome power of racism, white supremacy. This was with regards to Katrina. I think other so-called nations did offer assistance, and suspected white supremacists in this area would not allow them to help. I think that did happen, which is valid for racism, white supremacy, even if someone does want to offer help from to racist, white supremacist victims, the white people would have to okay that, and I think that was denied to the so-called refugees in Katrina. And I did also want to throw in, I think white people prove their superiority every day. They don't come up and ask, am I more beautiful? They come up and say, all of the black people on this block are going to move by Friday. And they just wait, and you're going to move. Either you're going to move or we'll move you. I think they demonstrate their superiority every day worldwide.
And thank you for bringing up that part about the Katrina, because we had written about the Katrina, and I was shocked. I wasn't shocked, but I was kind of alarmed by all the governments. I mean, we listed at least 15 different nations that offered help, and President Bush rejected all the foreign offers of aid. And you can see the same thing happening in Haiti. And that's why it's important to have a worldview, because white supremacy functions the same way everywhere on the planet. And if black people, if we understood what was happening outside this country, we would know exactly what they're doing inside this country. And in Haiti right now, they don't want black people to help other black people. Wycliffe, he can't get any coverage in the American media. He can only get coverage in the European media. So even when black people try to help other black people all over the world, the white supremacists step in and interfere. So.
May I ask a question about the book?
Sure.
I didn't want to miss 909's question. I'm sorry for interjecting with that. I think he asked about the if you're around young girls and the damage that images of beauty have on them.
Mm-hmm. I do. It's difficult because, and it's tragic. It's heartbreaking because they're so demoralized. And they're so demoralized. I hope that black people, particularly black men, can understand. That's why empathy is so important. These girls, they look absurd and they look ridiculous, but that just goes to show you the level of damage that has been done to them, from the time that they're little girls with a black doll, white doll, to the time they become adolescents, where beauty really matters. And unfortunately, in our community, the beauty standard is still a white standard. So these girls grow up, they're already demoralized, and now they come into a situation where the media pushes this interracial stuff. They promote these famous black men with their white females, and actually, that's the best way for a black male to get ahead in Hollywood and entertainment, is to not have a black woman. So they push this imagery, talk shows, TV shows, reality shows. The dark-skinned woman is always fat and overweight and unattractive and masculine and manly. She's the subject of ridicule and jokes and contempt. The light-skinned, biracial, or white-appearing or white female is the only one that's worth loving. So a lot of these girls, the damage is so systemic and so deep that just coming up to them and showing them a mirror is not going to do it. They're already demoralized. So what we plan on doing after this second book is we're going to do a third book about uplifting the dark-skinned black woman and making her beauty a focal point of what this book and what we do from that point on. Because if you destroy the female, you destroy the family. You destroy the child. And what their system has done is it has taken aim at black women, because women are validated by men. And a woman is worthwhile because the men see her as worthwhile. And if the men don't see her as worthwhile, she has no value. And what you're seeing is these girls attempting, through the media images, the Mary J. Blige and the Eve and Wendy Williams with these crazy-looking blonde weaves and blonde hair, these girls are attempting to emulate what they've been taught is beautiful. And when you look in the mirror, you don't see what's there when your self-esteem and self-image is destroyed. The same way a white girl who's anorexic doesn't see that she's skinny. She looks in the mirror and she sees fat. So black girls are looking in the mirror and they're not seeing beauty. They're not seeing anything that's naturally beautiful. They're seeing ugliness that has to be corrected. And Malcolm X made a statement one time about the conch, and he said that he realized at some point it was the highest form of degradation, self-degradation, and what the conch did to the self-esteem of black men. And I feel that the weaves and the crazy hair is doing the same thing to the self-esteem of black females, only they don't know it. Didn't mean to make that so long.
Well, Pamela, I hope you come back on the show so that we can pick up again where we left off, because I realize it's a very sensitive topic. But just one last question in regards to the tragic arrangements. Can you tell me where you feel, or if you've observed, where most black females meet these white men? I mean, how are they? How is this happening? Do white men just come to them off the street? Is it at the job? Is it at school? I mean, where would you say it is for the most part for the average black female over the age of 25?
Mr. Fuller said something, that one part where I had to turn it off. He talked about, the white man will put you in these jobs, and then sooner or later he'll saddle up to you. I think what's happened, in my opinion, from what I've seen, is the white man, not necessarily every encounter, but usually they throw the challenge out to you to see if you accept the challenge. Because sex between black people and white people is a power. It's a sexual power. It's sexual politics. And by getting the black person to participate, that's a power move. And so the white male, whether he does it kind of sneakily or whether he does it, because he has a conduct to follow too, and that is that he should not be romantically interested in any non-white females. So he's got to do it in a way in which he's a little undercover for the most part. And I would have to say probably it happens a lot in these casual interactions at work when you're around and nobody else is listening, where he can sidle up to you unobserved and unheard by other white people. That's when I think it really happens. And I think it would be interesting to take a poll of black women and see how these encounters actually get started, or what the general approach is of a white male toward a black female. But this is what I have observed. It's generally something that's done out of earshot and eyesight of their white peers. They don't really care as much what black people think, because we have no ability to harm their reputation or punish them. But they do care what other white people think. And so this is what I found is a lot of it done out of earshot and eyesight of other white people. And generally speaking, I think that even though there are white men who have married black women, I wouldn't let that be proof that sexual political thing, that white supremacy sexual political thing is not at work. Because, hello?
Yes, I'm just going to say, would you say that you think it kind of borderlines on harassment in the workplace, the way that they approach black females? Because, I'm assuming they're not approaching you the same way they approach a white female. They're not asking you for a traditional date.
And probably not. And those that do, and see, that's the thing that's so clever about it, is if they do approach a black woman traditionally, she thinks, well, he can't be racist because he's approaching me traditionally. But what black women don't understand is in my opinion, what they don't understand is political correctness has led to people doing things in such a way to hide what their real position is. For example, a white guy can ask a black woman out and they can go on a date, but that's because people won't throw rocks at him or stone him or fire him from his job. But if that same dynamic took place that existed in the 1950s, he would not be asking her out on a date. See, my thing is my belief is that white people act the way that they act based on the amount of consequences. The sexual political correctness makes them have to adhere to certain behaviors, if this country went backwards, which I think it is going backwards, to a time of real racial repression, then I believe you'll see the white collective reverting right back to those behaviors that were common during that period of time. And so I think black people, we need to know our history because I think we're going to repeat it.
Question about 49. Oh, sorry, Nero.
Oh, no, go ahead.
In Chapter 49 of the book, Man in the Mirror, Confessions of a Recovering White Supremacy Addict, what was the finale of the brother, I guess, turning Fed witness?
I'm sorry, what was the last part? What was the what of the brother?
Yeah, what was the conclusion to that?
The conclusion is that he, like me, knows that he is still sick. But basically what he did was, at the end, he left the financial job he had, and he got away from all of the trappings, having to have the expensive car and having to have all the trappings of white material success. He did not engage in any more interracial anything, dating, friendships. He actually just blended into the crowd, and if you saw him, you'd never know the past that he had. But like me, he's a recovering white supremacy addict. But again, like me, he is trying to move forward and never to go backwards, because now he knows, well, he can't go backwards. So that is one of the people that we know.
Was he one of the authors of the book?
He contributed some things.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, and I thought the story was profound enough to be included because I felt a lot of people, black male and black female, could see themselves in that, in that whole transition from growing up believing that white is superior to find out that it's not.
I would agree, and I felt it was very profound. I haven't yet purchased the book. I was just reading it, the excerpts on Amazon.com, and that part of the book was so profound. I sent it to every non-white male in my address book, and I even sent it to people that I typically wouldn't even discuss racism, white supremacy with, just due to their, I just recognize where they are. But after reading that, it was so profound. I sent it, regardless. So I probably distanced myself from a couple of my my friends. But I mean, it is what it is. We are in a war, and I think we all have to get to the point of realizing that some people we're going to have to separate from in order to move this thing forward. So, thank you.
I agree, and I totally agree, and I think. If you believe in something and you're not offending anybody, then you really don't believe in anything. And I guess you could say I've lost some friends, lost some people that probably had a problem with what I believe about the the person in the White House included. And quite honestly, I don't feel bad about it.
I believe when you're at war, one of the things they tell you is don't make friends.
Yeah, and accept that there's going to be casualties.
That's right. Never know if that guy you call your friend you might be burying him the next day.
Right. And, unfortunately, I don't believe that. I don't believe most of the people, no matter. Sometimes I think, well, maybe things should get really bad so that it will force people's eyes open. But this white supremacy thing is so embedded, and they're so good at it, that even while they got their foot on your neck, they got you looking up and kissing it. So I don't think the majority of black people, unfortunately, are ever going to see it for what it is. But, you keep planting the seeds and keep trying to, pass the knowledge along. That's all you can do.
I wanted to get in we have about 5 minutes left in the broadcast. We will be back tomorrow, same show time, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central. We will have, related to some of the things we've discussed, Rutgers University, Minka Makalani. He is a non-white male, and he does research on so-called biracial identity. He might have a white parent. I'll be sure to ask. But his research talks about how non-white people who have a white parent, they have a tendency to do as much as possible to distance themselves from black people and being identified as a black person and the ramifications of that in a system of white supremacy. But he'll be our guest tomorrow, same show time, 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific.
Gus?
Yes, ma'am.
Could I make one last comment on the piggyback of what you just said? I agree with. I'm sorry.
Help yourself.
Okay. Just real quickly, I agree with that. And the one thing that's interesting is that racial myth, that browning of America, that more interracial relationships, breeding, and biracial or mixed-race babies will end racism eventually. And I think that's really important that people understand that that kind of breeding actually lengthens and strengthens white supremacy, because now white supremacists now have advocates. Now they don't just have the 10%, they have the additional percent of biracial babies that are actually advocates and promoters and what you might call buffers between the oppressed blacks and the privileged whites. So people who think they're involved in interracial relationships and then bring about racial unity and harmony really need to open their eyes. They're actually extending white supremacy, and they're actually making it stronger. And not just genetically, but also politically and socially. You know, because a lot of these biracial children, why would they want to be on the disadvantaged black side rather than the privileged white side? I mean, just logically speaking, if you could choose, if you thought you could choose, which they can't choose because they're still non-whites, but they try as hard as they can, and more than likely they will marry white in their attempt to distance themselves from black people. And that's all I just wanted to add.
The website, TrojanHorse1.com. The book, Trojan Horse, Death of a Dark Nation. Thoroughly enjoyed having Pamela on the broadcast. And, we got to do it again. As long as you feel this is a constructive investment of your time and energy, we got to have you back on the program to continue the dialogue.
Absolutely, and any time that you call, I shall answer. So I'm looking forward because I also learn, and that's what I'm trying to do too. Is I'm trying to get validation as well for what I believe. So anytime you call, I shall answer.
Outstanding. I hope people will get a copy of the book and read up so can have more questions, specific details of the book. Again, we'll be back tomorrow, same show time, 7 p.m. Eastern, 6 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Pacific. Should be lots of cowbells tomorrow as well. Thank you, everybody, for calling in. Hope it was constructive. Replace white supremacy with justice as soon as possible. Thank you, everyone. Cal signing out.
Thank you.